My name is Bao Phi. I'm program director at the Loft Literary Center. Thank you. The Loft started above a tiny bookstore in Dinkytown 40 years ago, so this is our 40-year birthday. We're now one of the nation's leading literary arts centers. We provide a host of opportunities to readers and writers, including classes for all ages, mentorships, grants, fellowships, readings, spoken word performances, and residencies. The Loft runs the Minnesota chapter of the National Poetry Out Loud Poetry Recitation Contest for Teens, which just ended, which was wonderful. We have a new Writing at Work program. We have online pay for manuscript consultation, and much, much more. We'll be heavily involved in AWP this year. For any of you who don't know what AWP is, it's the annual Writers Conference, and this time it'll take place in the Twin Cities. It draws about 15,000 publishers, writers, editors, professors from all over the country, actually all over the world, to our town, and that'll be here in April. Things that the Loft will be doing during AWP include collaborative readings with National African American Poets Guild Cave Canem, National Multi-Genre and Multicultural Workshop Organization VONA, readings featuring local treasures Louise Erdrich and national superstar Roxane Gay, and last but certainly close to my heart, a special Equilibrium spoken word show featuring short readings by over 30 spoken word artists of color and indigenous artists from all over the country, including Tish Jones, Guante, Danez, Hugh Wynn, Carrie Jackson, Patricia Smith, Reggie Kabiko, and Nimo Farah. Lots of fun stuff. Please check us out. There will also be a series of discussions on race in the arts from spring until fall here at the Loft, organized by David Murrah in collaboration with the Loft and made possible by Minnesota State Arts Board Artist Initiative Grant. We also administer the Emerging Writers Grant for Minnesota writers. If you're a Minnesota writer, you can apply for this grant, which will grant you up to $10,000 to support professional and artistic assistance. You basically get to develop and implement a plan for your own artistic endeavors. Winners will be selected to receive up to $10,000 for a year. Check that out. Guidelines are now up, and the due date is April 3rd. All right? We also offer the Spoken Word Immersion Fellowship, of which Nimo is a winner, and which is basically why we're here tonight. Basically, this is a national grant where spoken word artists of color and indigenous artists can apply for up to $7,500 for a community engagement project of their own design. The judges are always spoken word artists of color and indigenous artists, and actually, as a special treat, the current year winners are actually here. So when I call your name, please stand up. Cindy Tran. Christian Collier. Carla Cordero. And R. Vincent Moniz Jr. All right, for more on the Spoken Word Immersion Grant, Emerging Writers Grant, and all that other stuff I said that you possibly can't memorize, please check us out at www.loft.org. Everybody feeling good? All right. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce tonight's MC and curator, a Spoken Word Immersion Fellow, Nimo Farah. Nimo is an artist and activist that uses language to express things she finds too confusing. Her current undertaking is to develop her skills as an orator while blending Somali and English. She thinks herself charming and hilarious in the Somali language, but rarely does that humor translate into English, so she says. Her poetry and short stories have been published in Waterstone, the St. Paul Almanac, and the Loft Inroads chapbook. As a storyteller, she has shared her work at the Black Dog Cafe, at the Loft, and Pillsbury House. She co-founded HUMAAG, a nonprofit organization promoting art and literature in the Somali community. She is also a 2014 Bush Fellow, as well as being a 2014 Loft Spoken Word Immersion Fellow. It is our honor and our delight to introduce Nimo Farah.
This is a tribute to old Somali poets as well as the Somali language. I'm going to give you a little bit of background and what poetry means to the Somali people. And then the bios of everybody is online. You can find that. I'm going to kind of give you a personal bio based on my connection with the poets. And then they'll introduce each other, and that's how the night will go, right? At the center of Somali existence and cultural heritage is poetry. It's the way we measure and convey complex emotions when plain language fails us. We compose poetry and recite it to ourselves at times of celebration, confusion, and hardship. As nomadic pastoralists, poetry and song have gotten us through the travel of arid lands. During the colonial times, it was at the heart of the resistance and the search of independence. Lovers used it in courting, educators used it in teaching, and now here we are using it to understand ourselves as refugees far away from home. Those of us that grew up away from Somalia and in the diaspora, Somali proverbs, songs, and poems give us a window into what once was. Our curiosity is quenched in the lines of songs and verse of prominent poets that captured their time periods of the land and the people. Before colonialism, the poets that captured the pulse of the Somali people, I'm just gonna, because this is a tribute, I'm gonna just name a few, were Ali Duh Aden, Farah Noor, Salan Arabi, Abdi Kahel, Qaman Bulhan, to name a few. If you wonder about how life was during the colonial resistance period, you can find yourself in the shoes of a profound orator and influential freedom fighter that's really impacted my life a lot, Sayyid Abdullah Hassan, as well as those that followed him and sought independence and self-determination. Haji Aden, Afqallah, Abdullahi, Sultan, Tima'ade, Barqad Asa, Ali Sugule, Abdullahi Qarshe Hussein, and so many more. After the establishment of the Somali state, the poets that emerged along with their poetry composed very beautiful songs, very popular songs in the 60s, the 70s, and 80s. Poets such as Abdi Aden Qais Hadrawi, one of my favorite poets, who I think is one of the first poets that wrote about his mother so much. I do have two poems that I'm going to contribute to my mom, who's here tonight, and I'll share that with you in a little bit. Gariye Gene, whose son is with us tonight also, Abdullahi Hassan Gene, who will be sharing with us, who in that period when people were becoming more urbanized, was sharing poetry about nomadic lifestyle and nature and all of those things. Even though he'll write a love song, he'll capture it in a way that was really connected to nature. Poets such as Sengup, who were also from that era during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, who wrote a lot about astronomy and used those metaphors to write about things that are like everyday things that we struggle with. And then our very own Saeed Salah, who lives in Minnesota and teaches at the University of Minnesota, who used poetry to teach and had his songs in the literacy campaign, as well as just teaching biology using poetry, right? And he's a local Minnesota resident. Somali poetry consists of the following genres. I'm just kind of, you guys might not remember it, but I need to just mention it, right? These genres that vary in complexity, such as Gerar, Chifto, Masafad, Barambur, which Ash is going to recite for us tonight, Heso, Guro, Shirib, Wagled, and Mahmah proverbs. Also, as you listen to some of the Somali poets, this is a bilingual event and there will not be any translations. As you listen to the Somali poets, you will listen, the rhythmic style is alliteration, which means that it rhymes from the beginning rather than the end. And so you can use that to follow. While this is a tribute to all Somali poets, this is also a celebration of the younger emerging poets and those that are very established in their fields. The order of the evening tonight is Ahmed Asad will go first. Ahmed, I've been following his poetry for several years now, and one of the things I love about his recitation is that he's a great storyteller, first of all, but he can also recite in the tone of old Somali poets. He could just like do impersonations and just kind of like be playful in that way. And he does children's stories. I mean, like, who wouldn't love that, right? Asma Farah, I don't know where she went. Yeah, our youngest poet is just a young, fierce activist who also uses poetry to understand her experience living in Cedar Riverside, or just growing up in the diaspora. She was born in Gambia and now lives in Minnesota. Abdi Phenomenal, who's just an amazing activist and just a really chill poet also. Who one of my favorite things that I heard was that when Abdi recites poetry in English, you can hear the rhythm of Somali poetry in his poetry. So that's just like a really amazing thing to do with your poems. Abdi Gane, who I've kind of mentioned before, the son of the famous Somali poet Hassan Gane, and also I was just telling him earlier, I was like, I was in a film with your mom when I was in high school. There was this like PSA film, like a 15-minute film when I was in high school that I was in with his mom, Adar. And so he's here also. He normally talks about social justice issues among an array of things, but one of the things I appreciate so much is the way that he continues to use the Somali language, because if we don't use it, it dies, right? Especially those of us that are in the diaspora, we tend to mix languages and things like that, and that's how language disappears. Hirsi, who will be with us shortly, is also a fierce young poet. Asha Barambur, I just put Barambur there, but the Asha. I'm a storyteller. I'm trying not to do that right now because, like, Bao said, please keep it in 1 hour, right? Those of you that know me in Canada, I'm trying to stay composed and not, like, go in a tangent. But the Asha, I know her through the poetry that she does in weddings. And my brother and my mom are here tonight. So she was the poet at my brother's wedding. And so when you do barambur at a wedding, you go and interview the family and you capture that whole family in your poem. And so here I am just listening to, this beautiful poetry. And then I hear my name, and then she says all these amazing things about me that it's just like, whoa, I didn't realize I was that great, Thank you, and that's and barambur is it's a woman's traditional poetry that's between song and just speaking. Amjad is, I think, the person in this group that I have known the longest. He's one of the reasons that I've never told him this, but I saw him recite like almost 10 years ago, and we used to host an event together for young Somali poets a very, very long time ago. And he continues to teach in the community and uses his poetry in activism, and I think that's a great intersection. The last poet that we have tonight is a writer, an incredible writer, and there is this virtual village that we have as Somalis in the diaspora, and it's online, right? So you find all these amazing writers on Tumblr and Facebook, and wherever you go, there's like this living village that's online, and that's how we connected. And she emailed me her first book, which was part of 7 generations of African writers, I think is the name. Her book, her first chapbook, Ordinary Heaven, and I was like, whoa, I've never seen somebody pay so much attention to like the littlest details that we sit through but miss in a room. And so I was like, I want to one day invite this person to Minnesota, and here she is. Her second book is coming out April 1st, but we have it here tonight. It's called The Kitchen Dweller's Testimony. Amazing title, right? And so you can get that out there and get it signed. We're very lucky to have all of these amazing people sharing space with us tonight. I have this poster also that you can get out there, and then if you want to, use it to start a conversation, right? Be like, hey, can you sign this? And then just ask questions from the poets. That's cool too. But I just want I just want to point this out. The original thought that I had was to have everybody's voice in a CD, but then I'm like, who really uses CDs anymore, right? Nobody wants that. So all of the poems that you'll hear tonight will be on Bandcamp. It's at the bottom of this poster, sellyarts.bandcamp.com. There are a lot of people I'd like to thank. I'm not very good at thanking people when I'm here. I just want you to know that I'm very grateful to anybody who has been part of this project. I want to thank Tessa, who designed this poster, first of all. This is a picture of my aunt that I took 4 years ago in Somalia, if you're kind of wondering what the image is. And she played with it, and this is what we have. The audio for this project was captured by Todd Mulby. He's here, there he is back there. That will be available online. I want to thank you, Todd, for that. And basically all of you guys for being part of this, and Baufi and the Loft Literary Center, and everybody who's here tonight. I'm going to shut up right now. That's just kind of a lot to say. I'm going to share 2 short poems, and then you get to hear from the rest of the poets. These are 2 poems dedicated to my mom. She rarely comes out, and so when she does, it's a very special occasion for me. To the Somalis, moms are like really the most important, they're like our country, basically, like the most important thing that we have. And so here are 2 poems for all the moms in the audience, all of your moms, my mom in particular, thank you. Hoyo is the word for mom in Somali. She worries about time, I worry about distance. Her tongue is tired, keep talking. My ears are lazy, keep listening. She guides me to be an emissary. I sacrifice the afternoon to drive her in this city. After a journey, she names things we can't see. She named me after a heaven, my home since my beginning. Mostly, we're each other's happiness, which is the meaning of my name. Happiness, her daughter. 6-foot-tall sugarcane. She covers her expressions with a shawl. Modest, but heaven is at her feet, and I fear God through her. So I sit on the floor, massaging her swollen ankles. The combination of third and first world burdens continue to weigh her down. She was once a 6-foot-tall sugarcane, but now she and I are the same height, and my heaven is 7 inches shorter. All right. First up is Ahmed Asad. Welcome.
Speak Somali, we'll see. All right. All right, there you have it. Ugubi, ugubi, ugubi. Ugubi, odega, idaha, ogalis. Ogalis. I'm talking about birds, shimbiro. How Somali people communicate with birds. So for those of you who do not speak Somali, might have a little taste about it. Soomaalidii hore way fahmi jireen codka shimbiraha oo waa kii Ismaaciil Miraba hore u lahaa. Shimbirka markuu la hadlayay waa kii lahaa la hadlayay bahashi loo oran jiray guuguulayahow haddaad guga u ooyeyso markuu ka hadlayay waa kii sidaa lahaa. Haddaba nin dad qalaha baa beri gabadh yar qafaashay oo afduubtay markaasuu wuxuu la galay meel god ah. Meeshii godka ahayd ayaa waxaa soo arkay shimbirtii baa soo carartay markaasuu waxa u timi reerkii gabadha dhalay markaasuu waxay lahayd fa cali nuur inantaadii waraabowlo allah odaygii reerka u weynaa baa gartay wallaahi inanteeni buu sheegaysaa dadkiisu u tagayo wuxuu ku yidhi waxaan doonayaa in la igu daro ciidan fardale sidii baana la yeelay waa la daba galay shimbirtii yaray way orday hore ordisay iyadu waxay leedahay fa cali nuur inantaadii waraaba ilow ciidanka daba socdaana waxay leeyihiin shimbir garab lii wax ma garatee bal xagga u gudub shimbir garab lii wax ma garatee bal xagga u gudub dhinacyada ayaa laga maray sida u sii socotay bay waxa afka uga gelisay meeshii ay ku jireen gabadhii la afduubay iyo dadqalkii halkii baa gabadhii lagu soo badbaadiyay dadqalkiina lagu dilay. Haddaba cisho dhaweyto anigoo siidar maraya baan waxaan arkay laba qooley markaasaan waxaan idhi bal sidii Soomaalida hore waa kuwii wax garan jiray waxay leeyihiin kugur markaasaan dhagta la simcaansa waxaan idhi balnaad wax ka fahanto waa u tegi ودقيست mid baa waxay leedahay yeah they speak English too mid baa waxay leedahay haweenka sidar joogow siyaadina ugu ridaan way nin Soomaaliya tartamayo marka siyaad cali leeyahay haweenka sidar joogow siyaadina ugu ridaan way sodaha iyo hooyooyinko siyaadina ugu ridaan way singalada ku ahaw siyaadina ugu ridaan way ninkii baa u jeebay wuxuu yiri kur aka kur codkaaga kur ayuu ku yiri isagii baa la wareego wuxuu markan odayada bakoorada sito iyo dumarkii bay la hadlaysaa ragga la hadlaya odayada bakoorada sito siyaadina ugu ridaan way sarta dheer ku waafuushano siyaadina ugu ridaan way safka caydho loo buuxiyo siyaadina ugu ridaan way hatta cancer fiican iyo helin fresh suuban sadkiisa uu helayaa siyaadina ugu ridaan way anigiyo markaa yaaban ayaa ku soo dhawaaday isri bal adna Soomaalida ila shabri meel xun bay marinayaan bal wax iskaga yara tuur waa la wareegayo horta ninkii baa u jiibay wuxuu kur codkaaga kur siyaad ugu rid kadibna anigii baa lahjadii Soomaalida isri marba mid bal u saarinay sibraha iyo Soomaalida qolada guuleystaa la arkay waxaan idhi safka hore salaad buuxiyo siyaad inuu ugu ridaa way suufiyada xartiya culimada siyaad inuu ugu ridaa way ikhwaankiyo surwaal gaabanuhu siyaad inuu ugu ridaa way xitaa kuwa salaadii ka tagay soo laga waayay soo noqosho oo furantay siyaad inuu ugu ridaa way aan kur waa bay jiibiyo kur codkaaga kur siyaad ugu rid kadibna waxaan dabacay naaxiyadii kala duwanaa inaan ku eego waxaan idhi haanta dadkii lulu jiray waxba ka joogaan Allah waa lagu jira hooba la yeehde safka hore salaad buuxiyo igu ridaa weeye sufiyada xartiya culimaduna ugu ridaan weeye ikhwaankiyo surwaal gaabanuhu ugu ridaan weeye xitaa kuwa salaadii ka tegay soo laga waay soo noqosho wow furantee ugu ridaan weeye kadibna waxaan u bedelay guurow abkee aadano barigii hore waxaa la odhan jiray nin faruura foorida makaro fiiqna haba sheegi faryare xumaata filfil kaaga foqi maydo baabuur fanaali ka jabay fiid socon maay gabar foodle inaag la furay ma farateelo oo fi tariil furaan wali bayaanina saasa bariga hore la odhan jiray marka waxaan idhi suuq leeyda beecada gadaa siyaadina ugu ridaan waaye suuqa 24 kow siyaad ugu ridaan waaye karameelku waa soo camiray siyaad ugu ridaan waaye xitaa hilibka kuwa saafaya xitaa hilibka kuwa saafaya sarta googooya macaamiisha soo booqata ugu ridaan waaye marka halka markaa isla marayno ayaa waxa u gudbay mid la yiraahdo raaga ugaasi ila bulshadii oo dhan baa metelaya marba dhinaca waxaa jira raaga ugaasi marka obalayeyde Allah be obalayeyde walidiinta Soomaalida ziyaad ugu ridaan weeye ubadkiinu soo saaraya ugu ridaan weeye macallimiinta zuzubano ziyaad ugu ridaan weeye si wanaagsan aan ugu shubnoy una saacidaye kaasina raaga ugaasi buu ahaa kadibna waxaa u gudbay bah la yiraahdo dabagarmaamays bariga hore waxaa la odhan jiray weysadaydu waa mulacyalays dabagarmaamayse uubaale xaabaale waa loogu hoydaaye banka tuyo waxaa laga helaa soofayaal jabane bay ahayd marka hore iminka waxaan waxaan idhi adiguna Siciid Saalaxow samihii aad beertay barasare muddo soo ahayd macallin suugaan leh Siciid baa tihiyo waadi aan go'in sabaanaadi siyaad ugu rid aan dooranno sama faleenkaas markaas ay jiibiyeen waxay kur siyaad ugu rid halka markaa maraynay ayaa dabagarmaamayska aan dhaafay baa waxaan aaday marka cadeey minankoo cusmaan maalkiis ninkii xadaa munaafiq waay ciyow biyaa keene cidaawo mane caweesi cayaar dhaafe ceelka soo jiide anoo usii gudbay meesha lahaa baydhabo jannaay ana banooy ballanka amaaya baayaa degaane baydhabaan beer ka tabadaane ariirow maya fadaase anoo markaa doonaya inaan sii galo bumidaan saaxiib lahay oo daadirow layaa ugu yidhi axmede adma waalatay maana koobi in laguu diro waaye ay kule calibanjar camalaa isu kuusoo haysaaye ay maxaa kugu dhacayna shimbir maaba la hadlo khoole maa la hadloo haysaa warhaa saaxiib ha iga qasino meel fiican bay ii maraysa oh my goodness markaasaan idhi daadiro maxaa iga qastay maya ii sheegaya waxay ku dhahaysay shimbirta markaasaan waxaan ku lahaa soomaalidii midowdo saxalkii baxyo samaanay soomaalidii midowdo saxalkii baxyo samaan waxaa lagu noqday berigii soomaalidu walaala ahayd soomaalidu way iscafiday dhulkii nabad baa ka dilaacday barwaaqaa lagu jiraa miya adoge waxaasaan kala hadlayay shimbiraha markaasuu yidhi hay an ma igu dheelooysa saaxiib waxaas wax ka duwanay ahaayeen maba ahaynba waxaas markaasaan waxaad ma ka hadlayay dibu ruqa dibu dhiiga sodohaa siigada ka quyara hoy soomaaliya nabad bay noqoto nacabkii ka dhamaa hoy hoy ho halkaasaan ku kala tignaadiya shimbirihi
Okay, now everyone who only speaks English, you're going to be at the advantage right now. But this is not going to make you laugh. Pirates, people in rough areas thieving to extinguish suffering. I'm not a pirate. I'm a pilot, privileged individual lacking only in time, and that's the only thing standing in my way. And if I didn't have to write this term paper, guess what, brother? I'd be marching streets today. But you know what they say. We're P-I-R-A-T-E-S. We are much more, yet we choose to ignore the obvious, even when history acknowledges we were kings long before the colonists. I'm from Seether, where we trust no Somali leaders. They use the local news station to feed us. Welfare queen and government cheese us. Princess Diana got girls to dye their face, get them looking like a whole nother race. Got a lot drop out, King Tut's in the cut, and a few notorious hood glorious poet laureates. But once upon a time, we were all newcomers, and we wanted everything. From a cement Section 8 sultanate to the McMansions in the suburbs. So much movement had the whole world asking, who are these people and just where did they come from? We're from Somalia, nation of poets and business people too. Since way back in the days, me and my people used to trade with ancient Egypt. That's why if you remember the time on MTV, Michael Jackson had Iman portray Queen Nefertiti. Little do they know that's not far from the truth, because we had a whole dynasty of a Somali woman's rule. I'm talking about Arawelo. We were sultans before being refugees. Somali sailors traded with ancient China, traveled across the world in the 7 seas, did business with the Abbasids, went to Persia to learn, and when our Masons came home, they built breathtaking castles made out of pure white stone. But all this is so easy to ignore when that notorious 7-letter word describing the horn flashes across your TV screen, P-I-R-A-T-E-S. But ask me, what does that word really mean? It means how colonialists came to Somalia, causing internal tribal divisions, then left, leaving the black man to forever fight amongst himself. And that's partly the reason why Somalia is this way. That's the reason why I don't claim my clan. I refuse to rep my tribe. I rep every single mother, brother, father, and sister that's struggling to stay alive. I speak from the perspective of a deprived African child, because they stole my history and tried to hijack my pride with prejudicial stories of piracy. But where are the headlines calling Halliburton a pack of murderous thieves, or where are the headlines of big corporate piracy, or of Dick Cheney's Mein Kampf, or how most people buying homes back home don't know the one-time sublime coastlines of Somalia have become one among the Western world's major dumping grounds of hazardous and biohazardous materials. But they would never put that on the news. Instead, they want you to focus on and hate 3 starving guys that are struggling to stay alive, putting their life at risk on a boat the size of a toothpick in the middle of the open ocean, trying to steal from an ocean liner. And guess what? The captain who shoots him down is the hero of the Carnival cruise, with passengers pointing out at the coastline in Somalia saying, hey, guys, come look at the zoo. Sorry. But once again, they would never put Halliburton on the news. I'm not trying to make an excuse, but fact check me because everything I'm saying is true. Nation of poets, yes, we are. So it seems only right that for Somalia tonight, we do it like Martin Luther King and Tupac Shakur was still alive. Let's make social justice and poetic justice collide. People in rough areas, even to extinguish suffering. I'm not a pirate, I'm a pilot. Privileged individual lacking only in time, and that's the only thing standing in my way. And if I didn't have to write this term paper, I'd be marching in the streets today. But you know what they say, we're pirates. But since we know we are much more than having a SWAT team call on us, let's no longer choose to ignore the obvious till South High textbooks acknowledges the lessons of history. We were scholars long before colleges.
This is called More Than Heroes. We live, we breathe with our wings open, running fast, get caught with our limbs holding. Caught in the sense of our dreams being broken, the youth have no choice but to sell their dreams for a token. And old age is unnoticed, the youth unfocused, and Al-Shabaab is trying to tell you they'll bring change, but only if you hold this. But I'm holding peace in one hand and freedom on the other. Peace in one hand and freedom on the other. And besides, what's the difference between galvanizing the bleak and sanitizing the heat, between utilizing the weak and institutionalizing the free? I said, what's the difference between galvanizing the bleak and sanitizing the heat, between utilizing the weak and institutionalizing the free? It's between not being able to see and what is the door of opportunities if you swallowed your own key. In order to stay sane, you have to confide in truth because truth is woven in the fabrics of the women and the youth. Thank you. This next piece here I'll share with you guys. It's a dear letter to the former president of Somalia, Siad Barre. I know a couple of my fellow poet friends in here have participated in this project. So if you had to write a letter to somebody who has either inspired you or who has had some sort of impact on your life, positive or negative, that you would want to have in front of you today, who would it be? So I chose him because I suffered from, most of us suffered from that gap of not being home. Dear Mohammed Siad Barre, you've been alive in my consciousness somewhere in the grave, somewhere between bailing out and the havoc you made. Those paintings are still up in Mogadishu with bullet holes on your name. Please tell me your last words and how heroes are made. Do they create themselves before they die, or do they become the masters of the dreams they slave? What happened in 1991? Because I was born June 3rd, 1987, while your consciousness was still contemplating about heaven. I wish you knew about those deaf and blind kids that could still spell your name. Naming the sounds of those bullets that put our consciousness to sleep, the mentally ill who search for heaven under their mother's feet, ducking those flags that they once used to keep. Resting with guns at night, searching for peace. Isn't it a beautiful contradiction how they still admire your reign? Like a hero who has sacrificed his life in exchange, the same time he pulled the plug out on his people that were waiting for change. Was it that easy? Here I was thinking you're alive because your time is still present. I wish you knew about being chained in camps, being a second-class citizen and taken back to save the ones we left behind. Instead, we get trained in camps. And I know you're probably curious about those men with the nice suits and the empty suitcases, but nothing has changed except their new states and their new faces. Thank you very much.
markii hore waxaan islahaa Soomaalidu aad bay u gabi jirto gabayga ugu dhintay baan islahaa laakiin caawa waxaan ogaaday inuu af Ingiriis uu isku rogay marka labadii qof halkan ugu dambeeyay talent ka lahaayay say u gabiyeen markaan arkay xitaa afka fahmayn wad garanaysaa waxa akhrinayaan inuu yahay gabay sidaan idhi af Soomaali baan ku gabiyaa kadib waxaan dareemay af Soomaaliga aan ku gabiyo inayna dhalinyarta yaryar iga si yaryar ee halkan joogtaa inayna fahmayn barigan yaraaba waxa jirta bahmaha carabiga loo dhigay ayaa waa inay hayd baan u malaynayaa carabiga aad ugu fiicnayna qadana u dhici kartaa annaasu a'daa'u mimma jahilu oo macnaheedu yahay sidii lagu dhigay dadku waa u cadow waxa ayna garanayn markaa waxaan is yidhahdeen fahmaynba gabaygii dee cadow enemigoodu noqonayaa wixii ayna fahmayno ka yaacayaan markaa waxaan is yidhi bal af soomaaliga taqaanidood ku gabyayso iyo xabadxabadooda af ingiriisiga taqaanid ugu dhex daro inay fahmaan markaa laba maasoo gaagaaban baan halkan ka akhrinayaa ta hore waxaa la idhahaa screen touch markaa berigii hore soomaalida gabdhaha waxay ku ammaani jirtay natureka sida dhirta geela quruxda waxyaalahaasay ku ammaani jirtay cirka soo da-aya laakiin hadda dad gabadh israada ku dheh waxaa tahay roob baa tahay dee kugu xanaaqaysaabo markaa waxaan ka fikiray waxaan sidhi bal waxyaalaha hadda la jecel yahay nolosheennu ku xidhan tahay sida telefoonada iyo kombiyuutarada iyo waxaas dib lagu ammaano maxaa soo bixi lahaa markaa kolley wax aniga qosol ilaah baa soo baxay dhib kalena way yeesheenoo berigii hore dee gabadha roob lagu ammaanaa roobku ismuu bedeli jirin roob s muu soo bixi jirin iminka iphone 5 baad haddaad ku tidhahdo 6 baa markiiba ka soo daba baxaya markaa gabaygii laftiisa in la upgrade gareeyo u baahnaanaya yeelkeeda laakiin waan akhrin doonaa ka hore screen touch baa la yidhaahdaa wuxuu leeyahy sidan cidlo lama ammaano gabdhaheenna ugubka ah geela iyo awrkiyo ari miyiga joogiyo cirankoday hilaaciyo olol laguma sheegee qurux waxaad u eeg tahay kombiyuutar abal iyo ibadka oo kale application badaney qof ismaara ina tahay dadka aanu sheegay say wallaahi adiguna mool furan aroorey eeriboodkii laafkaay eerbelaynta duushaay isbageeti maraqlaay alfareedho jiislaay aldhi caanihiisaay ubaxyada guduutee laga helay istoorkaay buluu beri udgooney abal iyo tufaaxay qare aad u weyney ininyaha garaybkaay orange lagu qaboobay inan yaab labaa tahay muuqa iyo aragtida screen touch baa tahay garashiya aqoontana iphone-ka qaar iyo malaafayfes baa tahay informationkaagaa satellite-ka aadoo fikirka iyo odhaahda iyo helitaanka erayada google laga adeegtay iyo internet yar baa tahay wax kasta haddaad weydiiso ka jawaabaysaa sida internetka hadalka iyo aftahamada mar idaacad baa tahay dusha laba ateen iyo batoniyo alaab kule marna aalad kale oo unugyada sirdoonka iyo f b i du qaataan waxaan is idhi malaha baasha wuxuu ujeeday ay ku wada xidhiidhaan application badaney qof ismaara inaad tahay dadka aanu sheegay say wallaahi adiguna skiinkaagu waa light steelkaagu waa wow speedkaagu waa fast smeelkaagu waa ubax speechkaagu waa nice absolutely cool iyo qof amazing aad tahay anna dhuurku jeceloo dheydkaa rabaanahay mana ihi mid dhaamo axmaqnimo dagaalka iyo ubadka iyo oorida afka inan ka laagiyo abiyuuska ma aqaan odayada gaboobee SSI-da qaatee isteer bagaska joogee aroortii kafeega iyo isku cuna kiniinkee isilowsan kuma jiro kuwa aabbahooda iyo ciddu soo inkaartee iska rida surwaalkee istriidka joogee iyagoo tarbiiciyo iin iyo qalaafale isu haysta gaangee isku toogta suuqee geedaha afuufee aqligure kuma jiro kuwa beerta aadee irbaddiyo siliijkiyo isku duro karaagee la iloobay kuma jiro reer aakhiraadkiyo inta qaadku qaatee ka alaylkii godad lagu asqoobiyo fadhiyada ibliiskale ku abaaday kuma jiro mitidiinta aarmiga aakayga haystee afka duubta badankee aagaa kismaayiyo laga helo afgooyiyo colka abumansuur iyo al-shabaabna kuma jiro adiguna udgooney weligaa inkaariya indhahaagu meel daran isha weli kumay qaban maad arag kalaabyada aftarbaadhi maad tegin huuka baarna maad iman dhabal abal la dhuuqiyo afka shishad maad gelin anna kula mid baane inuu xaalku allright iyo weli okay yahay ansarada su'aalaha emailka soo geli kaasi wuxuu ahaa screen touch kanna waxaa la yidhahdaa Facebook wuxuu yidhi accountkaygii fiicnaa inaan fiirsho mooyee for real umaan gelin long timena maan furin komadkiiyo fariimihii aan faafi jiray waa in dhoweyd ma faaqidin sawirana ma faalayn farta like kumaan qaban mana nicina Facebook fali daaray baa jira reason baan haystaa buu leeyahay aanu geli waayey Facebook filkaydaan ka doortaa blog igu fogeyso moodkaygu waa finish qofka adiga kuu furan farxad weyna kuu qaba ku faalow gareeye share iyo ku filan boog lama fool xumeeyee waxa aad falaysaa violation weeyaan iyo adiga faultka fariidii aan doortaay may faafreeday goorjas aan ku faanaay meel falaawar yaalaay furuud samarkii joogaay fuudh gaajo beeyaay feeg maaha caashiqo iyo shay fiqiiroo la falaashgareeyo si fudayda kuma jabo middle finger kuma tago haddii laisku taago fiitooda kuma go'o formulo la raaciyo furayaalna loo waa fannaan heese mooyee qof kaloo furdaansho garan kara fariimaha garan kara fartiisana filimaayo inuu jiro adna fiirali'ibaa aad ii fogaysee maxaan feefar kuu galay maxaan kaa fikiri jiray fiidkaad online tahay sidii foon cod laga xidhay vibration mooye farateeb garaaciyo maxaa faalladii maxaan gabay sidii foon cod laga xidhay vibration mooye farateeb garaaciyo maxaan faalladii gabay qoraal aanan weli furin waa waxay soo dhigtay iyadu qoraal aanan weli furin fahmin oonan garanayn farcarbeedna lagu qoray for you maxaan like si fudayda ugu nabay isagoon fahmin buu iskaga qaban jiray moogta maxaan heese fadhataa fiideoyo caashiqa wadna laba fallaadhood feedhaha ku haystiyo fariimooyin dhiigliyo muuqaallo faniyiyo sawirriyo faraawilo facebook soo dhigay inkastoon fahmaayoon mar fog aan aqoonsaday inaan feelgareeyo faylkaygu xidhan yahay filankiina ay cunay balse waa fajicise for real intaan jiray anfareen ha joogtee ma filayn baloogtaas ina kala fogaysee fiid wanaagsan inaan yahay thank you
How you guys doing? My name is Brother Amjad. I'm not supposed to be on this list. These are like some of my favorite poets and writers, and I'm just here as a D-ball because I just know them all, and I kind of punked them at the parking lot, told them you had to put me on the list somehow, some way. So like that's how I got up on this list. But I enjoy storytelling. I believe is a great platform, and it's a great narrative. It's a great platform to share our narrative, and I'm always constantly listening. I'm always paying attention, especially to the youth. There's a lot of students here that I know who are involved in another project that we're working on that's growing up organically. So hopefully you'll hear their story in the coming future too. I met this kid the other day that asked me about ideas to life and how to repent to Allah while still getting paid. Assume a grade, not a citizen, but something higher than just a modern-day slave. Worship something higher, seek knowledge, and produce something under the sun, then pass it on. And be inspired for life expires, because we all got to hit the grave. But while we're here, let's last a while and teach our kids something and raise them with an infinite smile. Fathers, let's stay a while and teach them about real manhood and how we can't solve violence with violence, so we can't manage a traumatized community from crisis mode, and learn how to address the root cause of this chaos and talk about the elephants in the room truthfully and cohesively. Learn about how to compromise our egos and pride. But what do I know? See, I'm just a victim just like you. Out in these streets, I've been shot just like you. And I've been to many funerals, burials of young African uncrowned kings whom I considered brothers in the image of my son. And their mothers, sisters in the struggle along my mother's side, and I've witnessed families suffer and grieve for many years due to this horrific, enter at your own risk, beautiful suicide, and all the allures of this fast lane lifestyle, interrupted circumstances among our youth in the diaspora, led by them Oscar motion pictures, worth 1,000 words, but I ain't hear nobody utter none. Nobody utter the word. See, this revolution sometimes is a photo op, and its march is going backwards, and the youth violent behavior is just an encore of our extended violent history and unhealed closures. But yet deep inside on a perfect Jummah afternoon, I'm always optimistic and conscious. I'm always optimistic and a believer in Rabbina subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I know that we can finish the road ahead of us. But before the strange land, before the name change, before the second language, before the immigration lanes, before ESL classes, before the big coats and the leather gloves, before the lost love, before this last plane, before the last look home, did you ask yourself, is this the last kiss, the first painful cry, the last goodbye? Before you thought you was gonna die, before you thought you was gonna die, after you asked yourself, why am I still alive? Before you asked why, before the first bullet, before the before the first bullet, after the last solar took it, before the first warlords, when you were trapped between both worlds, before you laid down your loyalty, before you were a casualty, before all the animosity, before clan hate became your reality, before all these countrymen could ignite the power key, before the colonizers westernized our personality, do you sometimes ask yourself, am I still a nomad? And if so, why'd you let it all go so bad? Thank you kindly.
waxaa la isugu yimid baan u malaynayaa de ciyaartan in lagu daray qol walba intay xoogaa tirisay cararaysaa hidaha iyo dhaqankii iyo gabdhihii iyo dhaantada iyo rag in la soo diyaariyay ahayd laakiin nagistaan baan insha Allah samaynaynaa war calaan daruurta u ego daawanaan lahayn calaan daruurta u ego daawanaan lahayn diyaarada aada dunidoo dhan baan lahayn wardarada dheeranku dalxiisna baan lahayn diyada iyo daqarkooda ay dafacaan lahayn ee waa la daalaye allow dowlad noo hirgeli war Soomaali hoodanba hay ahayd haybadiya kartile Soomaali hoodanba hay ahayd haybadiya kartile horyaalka Afrika oo dhan weeyoon la hiigsan karin horyaalka Afrika oo dhan weeyoon la hiigsan karin calankii oo horay u suuraan dowlad noo camiran ayaa cadowno shiro ciidna looga shubay waxaan daalso oo marniyo oo daladiya dhibkii waxaan daalso oo marniyo oo daanadiya dhibkii wardaayinka mahadiise hadda dawginoo hirgaalay calankii doogsadayo waddankeenni nabad dugsaday dumarku inuu door ku jiro oo baadad moogayin daruusta cilmiga iyo haga digriga hela colaada iyaga adamsho daawanoo sidaan caruurta daryeelo weligoodna dahshaan dayaca waalid uma ogolo oo way ducaysan yiin ilaahayow daa-in jannadaada deequsi ragga laakiin ma ogolaya raggu marka American nimad waa nagu kacsan yihiinoo haddaan la hadalna xataa ay la hadlin waddankaan ku noqonaynaa war caruurta daryeelo weligoodna dahshaan dayaca waalid uma ogolo oo way ducaysan yiin ilaahayow daa-in jannadaada deequsi dalkeenniyo nabada calankeenni daawanaa kuwii dibad aaday dib inay u soo noqdaan dalkii kuwii joogay danaheenna oofiyaan iyagoo isku duuban magacii dib loo dhisaa Soomaali door noqotaba aan daa'inkay warsaaday ee ducadu waa hile aaminta noogu daraa waa mahadsantihiin habeen wanaagsan raalli ahaada mid baan ka tegey waxaan ka tegey waddankaanaan nimid caruurtii baan la halgamaynaa waalidkii baan daadihinaynaa calankii waxaan leenahay war hala dhisa calankii madaxweynea dhashay waa raacsannahay raggiina waa nagu kacsan yihiin waxaa weeye ragga aan u qaboojino bal maalin dhawood baakin baan damca inaan galo intaan baakinka galayay ninba inta soo orday baakinka dhinaca kale ka soo galay wuu igu qaadi lahaa waa ka joogay markuu baakinka galay aboo baakinka anaa kaa soo horreeyay naa meeshii laydinku ma ahan buy ha ila hadlin horta adiga maxaan sameynaa naag soomaali maba arki karaba marka hiddaheenni awalna wiilashu markaan waddada marayno waa noo banayn jireen gudba gabdhayahow soomaaliyeed dhalinyaradii miyaa meesha joogta kolley adinku generationka waxaa ku jirtiin baby sweet gabdhaha waaweyn baan la hadlayaa yaa generationkeenaan studentiga iyo adduunkan la kulmay baby mommy can you hold the baby where are you going my husband and me we have to date na Monday caruurtaada hayso allahe alla miyaa siidar baan rabaa inaan islaamaha la soo sheekaystee adinku taasaad ku jirteen gabdhaheena waaweyn ragga bal iswiid iyo dhaqankii hore iyo bal hala xagsada meel xun baa lagu jiraa
My name is Lovin. I'm very grateful to be here. Thanks, Nimro. Thank you to the Loft and M&Q staff. And thank you especially to this audience. I've never had an opportunity to read to so many Somalis, so this is truly my privilege. Okay. I'm gonna start intense, and then I'm gonna be a little sweet, and then just go back to intense. Just so we're clear. Woman, ego, shadow. Now I go into a brown sleep and look for myself. The last time I tried to see her, I dreamed a white cricket. Its chirp was deafening. It survived the fire and disappeared. Who has taken myself? When she was with me, dream was a mug with a chipped rim, concrete against the lip, sand in the teeth. We never swallowed the missing pieces. She was firmly affixed on a path. She drank boiling tea and said, "Girl, girl, how come I got so much middle luck?" Me and myself are two flames following a line of gunpowder. We race, combine, then extinguish. Me and myself are trees' ashen roots and the sidewalk that boxes us in. Me and myself are a dial tone ringing out into the street. Me and myself are a small house, poor but not mean. She is the tall window that shows a bed and an open wardrobe. I am the young man considering t-shirts and jerseys. She is the woman who looks up at him from the street. I am the rat that runs eager in the yard. Me and myself have been raping each other for a long time. Myself prefers a boot on the back of my neck, so all the neighbors can see her try to make me pray to the pavement. Where has she packed her purse and gone off to this time? She could never tell if she would take the train north or south until she frowned and let it pass or sat by the window. Myself used to hear everything wrong. She'd say, "Them Gulf Coast men was bullied and harnessed by their bosses, but then the wrong music was better if it whistled from her." She'd say, "The wolves been biting just to taste." Or, "The caterpillars are denuding their homes, a tree's privates are the loneliest place." Myself burned her palm into my back. When I turn to see if she's there, she goes. I am looking for myself. If you fall asleep on the couch and see her, tell her I have a knife for the place between her shoulder blades. Tell her I said, "You lie so good, you make the ocean sweet." Tell her I said something standing by my bedside and I know it ain't her. Tell her my sleep is usually navy blue or even green and gold and I want it browner than knees or butt cheeks. Tell her something that tastes like tea with grit in it. Tell her I put poison in the pot and intend to watch her drink it while she's telling me something crazy. Tell her I'm out of breath. Tell her there's a paw the weight of a large stone on my chest. Tell her I've seen the moon come red out of blackness. Tell her the sand is rising as one people and rushing somewhere. Tell her she's missing all my wildness, and if she doesn't come on soon, I'll have to go looking for my shadow. And myself knows shadow's the kind who don't take her shoes off for nobody. I feel like we don't talk enough about pressure. Many of us are under pressure, especially Somali women, so that poem was for that. This is invocation. So Somali people know we have a rich tradition of cursing in Qad, right? You're not supposed to do it, in case the doors, the gates of heaven are open, and sometimes a mom will say something very ridiculous because she doesn't actually want to curse her child, but then sometimes they can be kind of serious, but they're intensely beautiful, and these are based on actual Somali curses kind of translated directly or metaphorically. Invocation. Splay yourself on the floor, mop spread before God, and may your submission remain false. Let intention and the ground you stand on crack and wander become distant dimensions. You crawled on my chest, a little spider. You blended into bedding and startled me, chipped my heart. May your own chest break. I'll slap you into the floorboard, clean you up with too much soap. Yes, I'll stand at that corner, inhale and smile, remembering my frenzy. We're beyond known curses. You can still be ground meat in the street, turned out by wheels, coiled under some car, but I'd prefer you bleed on command. May your stomach fall out. Since you like showing off, drape it over your shoulder, wear it to the market. May your mouth let go of you. May it go to a place whose light doesn't reach your fingernails. Oh, I hope bad luck hog ties you. At least let it restrict your stride. I hope the shadows underfoot stumble you. I pray a snake grinds you in its mouth, not just bite, not just chew. May all animals turn against you. God, restrain my hands, intercede. My father is under my scarf if I don't beat you tonight. My father, underground for a generation, would never inhabit a hairline. I'm going to beat you like I'm your mother. I've got something sharp under my tongue, some shard, black metal in both mouths. I'm fashioning a weapon. This is part of the reason that I can't get into it with people. I have to say nothing. If I'm say some of that stuff to an American, you're going to jail. Do not pass go, do not collect 200, go directly to jail. Okay, so here's a little sweet. Situations wanted. Is there anyone who can be closer to me than my forefingers? My inner arm and rib. I am looking for a man who will let me make myself small, then crawl into his pocket as he watches TV. He must know how to love his shadow, how to say I love you to even the periphery of his body. Let us be like wrists rubbing against each other. I will pay you with good intentions. I will be your friend in the way mirrors befriend, then grow water. But my face is a black mug. You can drink its water and not know its bottom until a bug bumps your lip. If you are willing, let me show you how fingers know each other. Even birds try to build their homes again and again. We like to talk about birds. Birds, water, grass, shadows. There is a landscape that the nomadic lifestyle, right, creates. And the poetry is true to that. So this is water. I came to you carrying water. I came to you carrying silted water from a well, muddied, carried in a bucket with a split lip. My water tasted salty and like the earth, and so like blood, and I brought as much as I could carry in a bucket that drooled tiny streams of water on my mud-ashen legs. In all our days together, I have walked between well and house enough so the path is marked with the branching roads of my souls. I have come to you so often, the path has many other roads if only you kneel in the dust and look for them. I am subject to you in the way the water is subject to the moon. You are subject to me in the way a wall is subject to its roof. And like the water, I expect you to come upon me of a sudden, like flesh out of a slit in cloth. And like the wall, you expect intimate collapses, capillaries of change inscribed day by day on our surfaces. I came to you with water from my deep well. I came to you with earth for your ready water. Water in every crevice for the valley that divides your tongue. I held your head in my lap and traveled the many roads leading out of that valley. Are we okay on time? How are we on time? Okay. And I want to thank the other poets for your work. It's been such a pleasure to listen to you. So I'm just going to do two more. These are new poems that are not found in the book. So my mother wanted to name me Marwa after the holy well. If you don't know, in the pilgrimage at Hajj, there is a very, people run between the hills. They run between the wells. It's very an important rite. The other thing that I should say is the Prophet Solomon, peace be upon him, had a hoopoe bird that could speak hudhud, that he would go and he would send, and it would make reports about war and communicate these things, just kind of like transcendent bird. And it reminded me very much of the work that drones do. Except that's not transcendent, right? It's not magic. It's not beautiful. So that's all I'll say. Introduction through parables, Marwa. I was named after a well. My sister, too. After holy wells, distant from each other, we are distant from each other. Our mother didn't intend it. War is the frantic wet nurse running between us. We are both thirsty. We are all thirsty. There is no divine child to make our waters holy. Our waters heal no affliction. Who would supplicate at our bases, seek our waters? In parables, girls are never divine, only their mothers. But like Abraham, I ask God to show himself. I ask in the plains. I ask in the desert. He answers me with light. He answers me with metal. Tea with an iron flavor, we sell it town to town, migrants in our own wild bush. Gunmetal sweat, weapon oil in the life and luck lines of my palm. We traverse the land. We move with shadow. We are guided by water. I ask God to show himself. A prophet quartered birds and waited for God. Yet another was given a hoopoe that spoke. Some have war birds. They too look. They too make reports. We live in a time machines have emissaries. But like Abraham, it's not possible to destroy me. They try by fire and by sand. They try by metal and by verse. Still I traverse my land. Without a sister, with no family. Not even a man who no longer accepts a hand on his chest when frantic. Myself, strange women, strange girls traverse. In this parable, men and boys attain godhood. They send war to run hill to hill, well to well. War runs so fast she loses a shoe. There is no holy child. War ran with empty arms and empty shawl. When men and their boys come to a frenzy, they can't submit to anything. No thing is a kindness. Nothing is a kindness. Don't touch me. Don't look at me with their whole persons. No one supplicates to frantic gods. Their command has no end. It can never become story. It can never become ritual. So one last piece. It's short. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Parable for refugees. 17 common flies, clustered, hallway, days. They no longer fly through the screen when ushered. Week. 2. From. Light. Real. Artificial. Did they forget the sun? Fly towards faces. Some dead on a sill. Some walk. Did they forget how to fly? Why don't they go? One paces on a step. Do they wait for a shoe? It averts them. Goes. Why die still? Is it madness? The ones who wait. Thank you.
I'm just gonna run through some really quick thank yous. Hold your applause to the end. Thanks to, again, Josh Jarud in the back, Asher Eads and all Loft staff and volunteers, Majors and Quinn, DJ Knock, Browntown, Anna Min for taking photos. And could we make some noise for the person who brought us all together here, Nimo? Thank you all for coming. Have a good night.